So what is the difference between a setter and constructor injection in Spring?
Yeah, by using the setter injection, we can actually provide the dependency injection only a particular field, but constructor injection we can inject for the multiple fields. So setter injection is basically a partial dependency, and setter injection always overrides the constructor injection. So if we use both, then IOC actually pick the setter injection, and we can easily change the value of the setter injection without creating any new bin, which is not possible by the constructor injection.
What is the use of prototype bean in Spring?
Yeah, prototype bin is used means that when a new instance actually created for every request, it's called actually the prototype bin. The new instance is created for each request, that is called the prototype bin.
And what is the use of that? I mean, why they introduce prototype bean? What are the different scope of bean in Spring?
There are five scope. Singleton is the default scope, then prototype, then request, then response, and then global session. So request session and global session. Sorry.
This controller annotation and REST controller annotation, how it is different from each other?
Yes, like a controller annotation will be used for the UI purpose. Like so, when you are requesting anything, so in the UI related thing, so what they will we will define that a controller method and to represent the next action for the particular action given from the UI. So coming to the REST controller, that will be useful for the implementing that API things and all, which will be like so REST controller will.
So before using the REST controller, there are two annotations we have to use. So one is controller annotation, and I think another one is request
And
mapping.
response body.
Response body. Yeah, correct. Response body.
Yes,
So
yes.
now we just have to use a REST controller. So do you know how Spring Boot application works internally? Means suppose whenever you are running any Spring Boot application, what is happening behind the scene?
So basically, it tries to find. So basically, if there are some CMD line runner or something, there are 2 to 3 tools. Tools. I do not exactly remember the second name. One is CMD line runner. So whenever your Spring Boot application boots, it tries to find those classes initially and try to work with it. Like if you have a data SQL script or something which is your configured has to be run prior to your application. Those things will run initially. After that, it will try to find a class which is having a Spring Boot application annotation. So that would be your entry point for your particular application. From there, it would be, so it is basically consisting of three annotations internally, which is enable auto configuration, component scan, and configuration. So as this three annotation have their rules which is defined, like enable auto configuration will basically find your all the data which is your in the application properties or whatever drives you are configured. So it will automatically configure all the tasks which is, it will basically set up an environment for you. Apart from that, it would try to the component scan and configuration will try to find your controller and component classes which you are trying to call from there. So basically it would be navigated to there, and then once the activity is completed, the so it would go to basically then the another flow is like controller service repository, and then it trackbacks and gives you a response to your JSP app where you want to have it, like Timelift or something where you want to publish.
Okay. Which module of Spring you have experience?
Spring Boot, Spring MVC. But currently, last 3 years, I'm working in Spring Boot only.
So have you used actuators?
Yes, actuator.
Admin feature of Spring Boot. Have you used that?
Admin features. No. We are using Spring Security, Spring Actuator, Spring Initializer. These are the features we are using. Auto configurations.
In Spring Framework, what are the different annotations you have used?
Yes, like Spring Boot application, that is the main one we have used that and REST controller and component and get mapping, put mapping. Those things I have used and like added value and those annotations I have used.
Okay. Can you tell me the flow of Spring MVC?
Yes, so Spring MVC model view controller. The first thing what will have, it will do like, so whenever you are doing like hitting any request from the UI, like when you are doing any submit button, you are clicking, that particular action will be come to the dispatcher servlet, which is a front controller. So that will be the first thing what it will do. After that one, what we will do like, it will search for that particular respect to controller. That particular dispatcher servlet will search for that particular controller. After that particular controller, we will define the logic whatever the business logic, the service layer. So in the service layer we can define that particular business logic. So that one we will put it in the model object. That particular model object can be able to access to the both service layer as well as the view means in the like front end. So that will be like a view in the sense HTML. So that particular model will be available to that particular view. So whatever the results will be displayed on that particular view, like a sort, and that particular model that will be get displayed under to the view. So this is the entire architecture, MVC architecture.
What is IOC?
IOC is means the full form is inversion of control. So generally in the old age development, right, before the Spring comes into the actual IT world. So what we were doing the, for example, any dependency, right? So we were actually creating the object of that dependency, and then we embed those dependency in our constructor either or using setter, right? So that was the task of the developer to provide the dependency, but with the help of Spring, right, that action now it is taken care by the framework only. So using the IOC, that's inversion of control, that control of making control of wiring all those dependencies or embedding those dependencies is now taken care by the Spring only.
What is the benefit of using Spring Boot?
There are various benefits that for using the Spring Boot. Okay, so first of all, we can create standalone applications. So let's say in Spring, what we have to do, we have to create a WAR file and then deploy on the external server. Okay, that usually takes a lot of time. And let's say in Spring Boot, we have embedded server that is Tomcat. Okay, so we have to simply run our application. So that saves us all a lot of time. And then we have starter dependency as well. Okay, so before starter dependency, we have to manage a lot of dependencies. Okay, so let's say for web application, let's say we have to, let's say if you want to create a services, then we have to, let's say we have to add, let's say the Spring Web, let's say dispatch, then we have to basically manage dispatcher servlet. We have to add Jackson dependency, a lot of dependencies. So in this case, these basically starter dependencies are dependency descriptors. Okay, that we have to only add one single dependency. So it makes our application easy and we don't have to add a lot of dependency manually. Then we have auto configuration feature as well. According to the dependency we have added, Spring Boot try to load the default configuration for us. After that, we basically we have application.properties as well. Then simply we can add some properties in the application properties, and then we have Spring initializer, that is normally web application that we can simply use to create our product structure very fast. Then we have Spring actuator as well. So yeah, there are a lot of benefit for using Spring Boot.
So how do you handle exceptions while using the Spring or Spring Boot framework?
While using Spring Boot, we'll declare the at exception handler. With the help of at exception handler, we can declare the class. With the help of annotation, we can have the class with the help of global exception annotation. When the keyword we use the at exception handler, and we can the value keyword will give the exception class. And in Spring, see nothing but it's normal. Is wherever we will create a custom exception class, and we can call those object in every other class we use in the Spring framework. With the help of annotation, basically in Spring Boot, with the help of annotation, we will have this exception. Yes, in Spring Boot, we use the annotation. In normal Spring framework, we used normally we'll declare a class, and we can use that exception in every other methods, in every classes.
There are request param and path variable annotations as well. Have you used that? Yeah. So what is the difference between them?
Path variable is whenever we are going for a get method, get mapping. So whenever, suppose if I have to do a get mapping in my REST controller, so there what happens, we give the path variable. So wherever we are, the endpoint, whenever we are, for which we are actually fetching the value. So we have a question mark. And after that, we put like in my current scenario, like I'm working on ISIN, and that's the value of the ISIN. So what I do is it is a path variable. So I will, if I am hitting the URL, then I'll put it as path variable, whatever the ID is, and the value is. So that is comes under the path variable.
Can you tell me what is response entity? So have you
Uh,
worked with REST?
yes, I did. I
Okay.
did.
So in terms of that, what is response entity?
So basically, when we make any, so suppose I'm having a REST controller service, a REST controller or controller class from where my service is getting called. So whatever response would be returned by a service, it would be having a response body, and that entire response body we set it inside a response entity, and we return it to as a output of that particular REST service.
Are you also having experience in Spring MVC?
Yeah.
And what are the other modules you have used of Spring?
Spring MVC I mainly use, and Spring Boot, not other like Spring IOC, but Spring AOP and all I have not used. Spring Batch or Spring AOP I have not used.